This is from last week's meeting on April 14th. We'll have another meeting that teachers will attend this next Tuesday on April 28th, and I'll update you guys on that as soon as I get that information. And that one's all focused on your guys' experience on exam day. So it'll talk about what you're going to use to log in and things like that. And it'll have a little worksheet for you to go through that shows that you have everything that you need to for the exam. But here's what we know right now. So this will just be a review. Oh, that should say chemistry on there. This is the chemistry exam. Let me switch that right now. These are your dates for the chemistry exam. The only thing I want to point out here, this day doesn't change for May 14th. Everyone will take it exact same time at noon, which means you have to have access to a computer or some other device that you can access the internet on by noon, and you want to access it a little bit early, log in, and everyone's exam will start at the same time everywhere. So it's not a show up when you want to and the time starts. Everyone takes the exact same time. If something were to happen on exam day and your computer fails or something else like that, this June 2nd, your makeup exam, that's what that day is for. The only other exception for that, if you have a conflict for Thursday, May 14th, like you have a religious reason or you have some other event that's happening that you can't move, you can talk to our school, and the AP coordinator at the school can get you into this Tuesday, June 2nd event, but you can only do that through talking to our AP coordinator at the school. Otherwise, you'll only take the late exam if you have something go wrong on exam day on May 14th. Just a reminder, what's on the exam, units 1 through 7 are on the exam, and 8 and 9 will not be on the exam. That's your titrations, weak acids, weak bases, equilibrium, and then applications of thermodynamics would be like electrochemistry problems. Your first question will be 30 minutes. Your second will be 20 minutes. And originally when they released the information for the exam, they said that you'd have 25 minutes that you'd get to see the question would disappear, and you'd have the last 5 minutes to submit. But they've informed you that it's going to just be one timer that runs. It starts as soon as you can see the first question. So you'll want to log in early on exam day. They'll give you a little key code, and you type that key code in online. And in your web browser, it'll be a specific code just for you. Once you log in, it'll ask you to verify your information to prove that you are who you say you are. And then you'll just wait and hang out for that first question to appear. As soon as it appears, a 30-minute timer will start, and you'll get to start working on that question. If you want to do it by hand, you'll start writing out your handwork at that point. And that 30-minute timer includes 25 minutes to read and respond to your question, and then 5 minutes at the end to upload your response. And they've said that your timer will turn red at that point, and you'll have an indication for a window to turn in your response. So uploading either a PDF or an image file of your written work, or if you're typing out your responses. They've made it sound like on the last presentation that you'll be typing your responses in a separate document. So you'd have like a Word document open or a Google Doc open. You'd be typing your responses in that Word document, and then you copy and paste that text into the submit area once that appears in the last 5 minutes. If you don't submit by the end of that, they will not accept your response. If you don't submit by the end of that and it's because your computer lost power or something else like that, you'll have a form at the end of the exam to fill out and explain what happened, and you would be able to do the retake, but no exams will be graded if they're not submitted by the end of that 5-minute interval. That's how you get your point. So it's better to submit it with a little bit less done than to not submit it at all. That's why they give you 5 minutes to upload it. Question 2, same format. It's just a little bit shorter, and it's 40% of your score. And you have to submit it before your time runs out. One thing that they pointed out, which is good to know, if you have slow internet, say I take question number 1 and my internet's just a little bit slow. I do the 25 minutes, I read and respond it. And then within the 5-minute window, I take a picture of my work and I click upload. If the upload starts, it doesn't have to be finished within that 5-minute interval. So it could be you're on slow internet and it just takes a while for things to happen at home. That's okay. As long as you hit submit, it'll run in the background, and question 2 will appear. You'll get to start working on question 2, and that upload will just continue in the background. You just have to have hit submit before the end of that 5-minute interval. Okay. Your question format, we've already talked about this, and I have a video going through that, but question 1 is 25 minutes and question 2 is 15 minutes, each with 5 minutes to upload. And they're all the same. For your guys' test, not all science tests are like this. Some have a specific content area that they're asking on question 1 and question 2, but for yours, it's just like your old AP questions that we're practicing. You could do any type of material on any of those 2 questions. What's on the exam? So you will have questions that ask you to interpret a graph or calculate values from a graph or decide what the graph represents, decide what you would graph on a graph to show like a reaction's first order or second order. You might have to describe, I'd put natural log of my concentration on the y-axis, or I'd put 1 over the concentration on the y-axis and explain why. But you won't actually have to do any of that hand graphing, because every one of your responses on the test, they've said, can be submitted by typing in. If you're considering handwriting your responses, just so that you have the option to be able to draw in peaks on a graph like this, or to sketch a graph, you don't need to worry about that. They will not ask any questions that ask you to draw stuff in like that, because everything will be able to be replied to via text only. So you won't have questions that ask you to do that. You might have questions that ask you to do this, explain how the graphs, so they still give you a set of graphs, support a reaction being second order or first order or 0 order. And you won't have to draw on the graphs, but you have to refer to the graphs. So you will be interpreting graphs. You just won't have to draw them. They won't give you a blank graph and ask you to sketch a second order, first order graph or what it looks like. Okay, so not on the exam. A classic one is this on a lot of exams, where you have the PES, or electron spectra, and they ask you to put a curve in or something else like that on the graph. You won't have that, but you might be asked to interpret why is the peak high here and the peak low here and explain what that means. Using electron configuration, you could do all of that by text. So don't expect to draw anything on it. Also on the exam, they might give you a diagram and ask you to represent or discuss why it represents the situation accurately, or maybe why it doesn't represent the chemical situation accurately. And you might have to choose the correct image from a series of diagrams and explain why, but you won't be asked to draw a diagram. So for this particular problem, it asks you, this is from 2019 exam, draw 1 dashed line to indicate a possible location of a hydrogen bond. You're not going to have to represent that on a diagram like this. You might just have to explain why or what direction H2O would arrange itself around the molecule, and you'd have to do that in words. You won't be drawing a diagram. Now, with that said, I expect that it wouldn't be unacceptable if you're doing handwritten responses to include a diagram for part of your response, which you wouldn't be able to do if you're typing them in, but it won't be required on the test. So you could use that to help explain what's going on. Another diagram, they often have things happening in solution and drawing where ions are appearing. You won't have that on the exam drawing it, but you might have to explain why the situation is what it is. A couple pieces of information that are specific for you guys this exam. You should have your AP chemistry formula sheet printed out before your exam. I would have a hard copy version of that just so you can refer to it quickly. If you don't have one of those and you want one, I can mail you one if you don't have a printer at home. Just shoot me an email. You will be required to do some calculations, and they say they can all be done by hand with a pencil and paper, which means it'll be similar to your multiple choice section of the chemistry test, which means you might have stoichiometry calculations still to do. And the only thing that would be different is they would give you a whole number ratio of the molar mass. So you might have a compound that's 16 grams per mole, like methane, and they tell you that you have a sample of 32 grams, and you'd have to just know that's 2 moles. Or 24 grams, and you can do that math in your head, 1.5 moles. So I would still have a calculator handy, especially if you're one of those types of students that likes to double check what 0 times 0 is in a calculator, just to make sure. Have a calculator handy so you can do that math. It is allowed, and it could be helpful for you. If you're typing an answer in that requires a symbol, so you might be typing and you choose to type and you say, oh, what about these equations? What if I have to justify something about Gibbs free energy, or some other equation, like I have to write the Greek letter nu for our energy equations for light or something else like that. They will give you, it just says that they'll give you a method for typing in variables. So they might just say, when you're discussing Gibbs, just call it G, or when you're discussing Planck's constant, just call it H. So you will be able to type in symbols. They'll give you a method in the question to be able to do that if you do need to. So everything can be answered by typing if you're going to choose that method. Test day information, whatever device that you choose to access the questions on, that's the only device you'll get to open it. So the code that they give you to log in online will only work on one device. You can't have the question up on one device and then upload your responses on a different device. which means if you're going to upload your responses by taking a picture, you would want to choose a device that might be able to do that all on its own, so you're not having to transfer a file from one device to another device, or make sure that you have a method that works well to take a picture with your phone and then transfer that to your computer that you're taking the question on. Because whatever computer or device you use, if it's your phone to open up the question, that's the same device you have to use to submit your answer or your response. So something to think about there. If you're typing it in, I would not recommend typing it in on your phone using your little keypad on your phone. Try to find a computer that you can type on a full keyboard so you cannot waste time with your responses typing and stuff like that. They won't take points off for spelling errors and things like that. They're grading your chemistry content. So don't worry about that. But if it makes it so you can't read it, they will not give you points for it. It's only one question at a time. You won't get to see both of them at the same time. Once the first one ends, you won't be able to go back to it. And then we mentioned this, once your upload starts, you can start the next question. It's okay if it takes a while to upload. They recommend that you log in 30 minutes before your scheduled test. So you'll sign up and make sure your key works. Before test day, they're going to give you a practice key to log in so you can go to the website and make sure that you can access it. They said that it'll give you practice uploading responses as well. And all this information, I believe, will come on April 28th. And you'll get to do basically a dry run through to make sure you understand the system. You can upload responses. You could practice there typing in a response or practice transferring it from your phone to your device if you'd like, which would be great practice to decide which one you'd like to use. But they recommend that on the actual test day, you log in 30 minutes early, and then you'll just wait until that first question appears. There's a little bit of time. It's not going to appear right at the start of our test window, so it's not going to be right at noon. There's a little bit of time in there, a couple minutes. So if noon rolls around on that test day and your question hasn't appeared yet, that's okay. They give a couple minutes for those students that might be logging on and experiencing issues. And then your question will appear. The timer won't start till your first question appears. Make sure batteries are charged, your connection's working, your internet's on. If you have siblings that are gaming and taking up all the bandwidth, recommend that they are not doing that on your test day so that you can access that information that you need to for the AP exam. Their end will always work. So AP has set up to be able to accept millions of responses all at once. So if it's not uploading, it's going to be on your side, not theirs. Academic integrity, they want to make sure that it's actually you answering the question. So within 2 weeks, all of the AP teachers will get each student's responses. So when you answer the question, they'll email that to us eventually. And I believe that they'll be asking about whether that information is consistent with your guys' work in the class to make sure that they're actually recording what students can do. They'll monitor social media. They've already mentioned that they've caught some people who are trying to plan to cheat. And any instances of that cheating will be reported to colleges or anywhere else your applications go. If you take the SAT through AP, anywhere your SAT scores go, they'll also inform that you've cheated on the exam. And then they say that they have unspecified information to help catch people who are cheating on the exam that obviously they're not going to release because it works better if you don't know what some of that stuff is. So don't try to cheat. You're working on it by yourself, but it's open notes, open book. You can use whatever else you want to. They will write the exam long enough that you're always going to be working on it. They're not going to write just a couple questions where you have plenty of time to look stuff up online. I believe that you're going to see the question and probably just be working the full 25 minutes. And maybe you won't answer every part of the question because you run out of time. Go to the question parts that you can answer best and quickest and turn those in. You don't have to be able to answer every single part of each question to get a 5 on the exam. They're writing it long so that they can get as much information as they can in 45 minutes. And your goal is just to get as much that you can about your chemistry knowledge down in that 25-minute period. And if you can write down as much as you think you can, you should be satisfied with whatever you're turning in at that point, and let the rest be done when they score it and compare it to other students. So you don't have to get a perfect score to get a 5, and that's the same every year. Usually about a 70 on the AP exam is a 5 or above a 70%. So you don't have to get all of the information. Okay, all answers are designed to be answered without special characters. We talked about that. If you have a disruption, we talked about that. You'll have the makeup date. This could even be something like my little brother's in the backyard playing on a swing set, falls off, breaks his arm. We have to go to the ER in the middle of the test, and I'm going with my family for that, something like that. So things can happen at home that you can't control, and you'll do the make update for that. And then this will be your college credit. So colleges have agreed to accept this, which makes sense because colleges right now, for their exams, for their classes that students are in right now, they also have to figure out some other way to assess knowledge. And so they're doing tests at home as well, open notes, open books. And so it's going to be similar to that. Don't forget for your reviews right now, you can do that multiple choice incentive every week. I'll post that, and that'll help you for your final test for this class. Okay, that's it for new stuff for this test. Are there any questions on the update right now, what we're going to see on the test?